As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, and as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. I'm convinced that in Matthew 25, which we'll read that in just a few moments, I'm convinced that that's what Matthew's thinking of. That scene, at least in part, as he describes a day of judgment. But before we get to that main text this morning, we're going to back up a little bit to Matthew 24, because there's a series of parables, a series of warnings through parables that Jesus tells, and all of them are about being ready. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows. Not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you must also be ready. Therefore also, I read that twice. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, open up to us. But he answered, truly, I say to you, I do not know you. Watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. 25 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them and made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I've made 5 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now the next 15 verses or 16 verses, this is the last teaching of Jesus before he goes to the cross. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations. And he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? Then the king will answer them, truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you did not welcome me. Naked and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. I could probably go sit down right now, couldn't I, Jay? Just have a seat. Let Jesus' words just wash over us. Meditate on them. You know, Matthew, in his gospel, Jesus often speaks of this line of demarcation between those who are lost and those who are saved. It comes up over and over again. Chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 10, chapter 13, a couple of times, chapter 16, and then what we just read in chapters 24 and 25. But those last 16 verses are what one person has referred to as the majestic climax. All these parables about readiness, but that last one about the sheep and the goats is the majestic climax. And in case you didn't hear just a moment ago, I will say this again. This is the final teaching of Jesus before he heads to the cross. You know, Matthew's been building up to this point for a long time. The whole story is building up to what we call the Passion narrative that begins in earnest right after our reading this morning, chapter 26 and following, where Jesus goes to the cross. He's tried, he's arrested, he's tortured, he's executed. But notice what he tells those sheep, those on his right. He tells them in the reading that Zion read for us just a little while ago, he tells them that they are going to inherit a kingship. He invites them to come and to enjoy the kingdom. Verse 34, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. He's literally saying to them, you, the righteous ones, you who served others, who saw me in them, you will inherit the kingship. And you know what? They were doing what they were doing. They were serving in the way they were serving, not knowing exactly that they were, by that service, actually taking care of Jesus as if it were he that was present and in need. And you notice they didn't even know it. But it was simply part of who they were. And so Jesus declares to them that they will be recipients of a promise really similar to the same promise he had made to his 12 disciples in chapter 19 and verse 28, that they will be reigning on a throne, that they will inherit a kingship because they served. The simple act of caring for another human being in need is all by itself service to, for, and on behalf of Jesus Christ. All by itself. Solomon wrote in Proverbs 19, whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and He will repay him for his deed. And I love that word poor there because it's a lot richer than just what we get in our English translations. It not only refers to the poor, but it refers to the helpless. It refers to the insignificant. Let me tell you something that you already know. Insignificance comes in all shapes and sizes, if you catch my drift. Insignificance is all around us, even as we sit right where we are in this moment. We are surrounded by people that feel or have been made to feel insignificant. Sometimes insignificance is found in our families, and it can also be rampant in our churches. Any Bosch fans out here? I know you are, Stephen. We've talked about the books a lot. There's a show, Titus Welliver, the actor, plays Harry Bosch. Can I say a flawed detective? Yeah, a flawed detective. But he has a saying by which he lives. A lot of the books and a lot of the shows, the episodes, revolve around the time when he was brought away from the robbery homicide division, which is like the premier detective division out in Los Angeles, and he was put in cold cases. So he's investigating these 10, 20, 30, 40-year-old cases, and people would often wonder, Harry, why do y'all put so much time, so much effort, so much energy, so much blood, sweat, so much emotion into these cases that are long gone? And he would always say the same thing. Everybody counts. What's the rest of it, Bosch fans? Or nobody counts. Jesus is telling us and these ancients in Matthew 25, and not simply in Matthew 25. He's telling us what the Bosch character would tell us 2 millennia later. Jesus is saying everybody counts. At that time, Matthew 18, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Notice that was the disciples' question, right? They were all about who's going to be first, A lot of moments in their lives and ministry where they want to know, can I have a special seat? Who's the best? Who's the greatest, etc. So they ask here. And calling to him a child, he put him, the child, in the midst of them, which I think is important. He doesn't put the child on his knee, but he puts this child in the middle of these 12 who've just asked the question. And he says, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never inherit the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." And then listen to what he says next. "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me." 8 chapters previous, chapter 10, verse 40, Jesus says something similar. He says, "Whoever receives me, or receives you, receives me. And whoever receives me, receives him who sent me." And I think it's important for us to focus on the language that Jesus uses there. Whoever. Now, Jesus isn't preaching universalism here. That's not what this is about, not in the least. But Jesus is teaching that the person who accepts the Christ-led life of another will also accept Christ himself. And that should be saying something to us. Whoever accepts the Christ-led life of another will also accept Christ himself. In other words, the person who sees Christ in us is a person prepared to bring his or her life to Christ. So how do we get ready? All of those parables, right? Every one of them are talking about readiness. How do we get ready? Well, we get all our theology in order, right, Lee? We get all our theology in order. Make sure I have all my doctrine in line, all the teachings. Got to get all that in line. I need to know my Bible inside and out. And I got to go to church and a Bible class, right, Keith? Got to go to church and a Bible class and small group. Maybe go to the heart singing. Maybe go to Ladies' Day. Ladies only, please. Men's retreat. Men only, please. So I get my theology in order. I get all my doctrine in line. I go to church and Bible class and small group. And ice cream social too, Ashley. We've got to go to that. I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, that we're going to see people in heaven who are never able to quote a single line of Scripture in their lives. I'm also convinced, 100%, that they're going to be biblical experts, scholars, folks with perfect attendance who will be absent. Reminder, Matthew 25, 31 through 46 is the final teaching of Jesus before the cross. So what does it say? It says several things. Here are a couple. We don't get to pick and choose who gets served based upon whether their behavior, their attitude, or their choices reside within the bounds of my personal tolerances. We aren't given the authority to forego service to a brother or sister, or really anyone else for that matter, who has been offensive or even continues to be so. You notice that Jesus assigns no attributes, no personal characteristics to any of these who are hungry, thirsty, sick, strange, or in prison. He assigns no attributes to them. He just says to those sheep, for instance, you saw a person sick and you visited them. Someone was in prison and you went to see them. Someone was hungry and you fed them. Someone was thirsty and you gave them something to drink. Someone was strange in your world, but you welcomed them anyway. And he doesn't say whether they were nice or hostile. He doesn't say if they were kind or hateful. He just says to those sheep, you saw them. You served them. Because whether you knew it or not, you saw me in them. You saw the image of God. Jesus simply says, you see somebody in need? That's me. That's me. See a need? Meet a need. Don't just walk by. Couple of questions, couple statements, and then I'm done. What if the person in need that people walk by because of some sort of conflict or vendetta or intolerable problem, what if that person had been you or me? Where would any of us be without the goodness, the kindness, the grace, and the love of Christ that has been manifested in others for the sake of our lives? As I wrote my article, and I know I did too this week, I got a little carried away. Jesus Christ has called his people to be interveners, not interviewers. Servants, not judges. And that applies inside this family and outside. As Jesus would say, and as Harry Bosch would echo, centuries later, everybody counts or nobody counts.